You can't wait on their affirmation. You can't wait on their approval. You can't wait on their support. Sometimes you just gotta run and look behind you and say, everybody who wants to run, but I can't stop running because you're not running with me. Listen to me, hear me. You can't stop chasing your dream just because somebody in your life is chasing with you. You can't stop believing in yourself just because somebody in your life will believe in you. You can't stop chasing the dreams of your life just because when you know when you do it, you're gonna have to do it all by yourself. Hello everyone, welcome to today's English Live, which is Series 2, Week 3, Lesson 2. Woo, we're really starting to crack through these. And today's lesson is a live comprehension lesson looking at the story of the War of the Worlds. Now, you might not be that familiar with the story. You may have heard the music, so especially if you do today's challenge on the end of the lesson, when you sit down to do your work, put the music from War of the Worlds on. You can Google it or look on Spotify or wherever you get your music. But it's a really interesting tale with lots of twists and turns, and I hope you enjoy it. So when we do a live comprehension lesson, I tell you sections of the story, and you need to listen really carefully because after each section of the story, I put 3 questions up on the board for you. And then you have a couple of minutes to try and work out the answers to the questions. Now, before I get started, Mummy English has been super busy today collecting in all of your shout outs from the chat. So I'm going to start with those like I always do. As you've probably noticed, I'm in a position now where I'm getting very breathless. So I apologise if I'm gasping trying to get through all these shout outs. So hello to Hang Lee, who is 9 in Kent, who's been watching since the first lockdown. And you've been coming to my weekly classes, Hang Lee. So well done and lovely to have you back today. Hello to Elizabeth. Big shout out to the Erlang family in Scotland who are ready for War of the Worlds. Awesome. Go Erlangs. Hello to Katie, who loves my lessons. That's lovely, Katie. Thank you very much. Hello to Madiha. Hello to Dulce. Shout out to Lee's Nan and Grandad, and they're going to watch the video. Hello, Lee's Nan and Grandad. Hello to Navia, who is 10 in Chelmsford. Big shout out to Leo, William, Yasmin, Ryan and Isaac. Hello to George in Somerset. Hello to Scarlett, who is 10, and Oreo the puppy. Bertie, my dog, as many of you know, normally pops in for a little cameo appearance, but I think with his old age, he's stepping out of the limelight a little bit. And every time I set up for my lesson, he goes and hides at the other end of the house. Hello to Ella, who is 13 in Liverpool. Hello, Thomas, who is 9. Hello to Aslan in Cardiff. Hello to Asia. Hello to Mary from Royston. Hello to Ollie in South Africa. And a big shout out to Kay. And hello to everybody, all of you. I'm absolutely delighted that you've chosen to join me today and to improve your listening skills and find out about the story of the War of the Worlds. Now, some of you will already know I'm doing a workshop looking at PEE and PEA style writing using The War of the Worlds as my themed extract on Saturday morning. So if you want to come along to that, you're very welcome. You can book tickets on Eventbrite. You just type Eventbrite English with Holly and you should be able to find all of my weekly classes and workshops on there. But that's not what we're doing today. Today we are doing the live comprehension. So, ears at the ready. Have you got them out? Here we go. Early one morning, a falling star appears over England. It crashes on Horsell Common, a large expanse of public land near the narrator's home in Maybury. When the narrator visits the crash site, he finds a crowd of about 20 people gathered around a large cylindrical object embedded in a sandpit. The object is made of metal and it appears to be hollow. The narrator immediately suspects that the object came from Mars. He knows a little bit about space if you read the story in more detail. After observing it for some time, the narrator returns to his home in Maybury, and by the time he next visits the crash site, news of the landing has spread, and the number of spectators has increased significantly. The narrator's second visit is far more eventful than the first. The cylinder opens, and he gets his first glimpse of the Martians. Now, this is a direct quote from the story. A big, greyish, rounded bulk, the size perhaps of a bear, was rising slowly and painfully out of the cylinder. Sounds terrifying. As it bulged up and caught the light, it glistened like wet leather. The whole creature heaved and pulsated convulsively. A lank, tentacular appendage, I love that description, gripped the edge of the cylinder, and another swayed in the air. After a second Martian makes its way out of the cylinder, the narrator runs away in terror. And while he hides in the woods, a small group of men, including a famous astronomer, approach the cylinder with a white flag. As they near the Martians, there is a great flash of light and the men carrying the flags are instantly incinerated. Pew! Several more flashes follow, causing the spectators to all scatter. And the narrator escapes back to his house where he tells his wife what he has just seen. It's time for some questions. Play. Let's see how well you were listening. We've got 3 questions for you. Good luck. Well done, Luke. You've got the first one almost right. Well done, Lilswell. Well done, Wanija. Pause. Okay, let's see how you got on with these questions. Now, if you are watching this lesson on catch up, of course, you have the opportunity to pause the video if you need a bit more time with the questions. That's absolutely fine. But for the rest of you, I'm going to give you the answers now. So hopefully you've had a chance to either jot them down, call them out at the screen, or pop them into the live chat. So, number one, what is the name of the public land on which the falling star crashes? It's called Horsell Common, Horsell Common. What is the Martian described as glistening like? It's described as glistening like wet leather. And that's a direct quote from the text. And what happens to the men with the white flags? They are instantly incinerated by a beam of light from the Martians. And white flags traditionally symbolize wanting a truce or to negotiate. They're a peaceful sign. So the Martians are not really interpreting those flags very well, or maybe they are just hostile. Who knows? Right, time to move on. So ears at the ready. Just slide that along. Okay. Shortly thereafter, military forces arrive on Horsell Common, and a second cylinder lands near the first. Fighting soon breaks out between the soldiers and the Martians. The following evening, after it becomes apparent that the soldiers are no match for the Martians and their heat rays, that's what killed the first bunch of soldiers, the narrator resolves to take his wife east to Leatherhead, where he believes they will be safe. Using a horse-drawn cart rented from an oblivious innkeeper, the narrator successfully transports his wife and a few of their belongings to Leatherhead. Late that night, he leaves to return the cart. As he approaches Maybury, he encounters a terrifying sight. A monstrous tripod higher than many houses striding over the young pine trees and smashing them aside. Sounds terrifying. Stupefied by the sight of the Martian fighting machine, the narrator crashes the cart, thereby breaking the horse's neck. Quite tragic. The narrator just barely escapes detection by the Martians, and against all odds, he manages to make it back to his house. While sheltering there, he encounters a fleeing artilleryman. Cut off from his wife by a cylinder between Maybury and Leatherhead, the narrator decides to travel with the artilleryman. However, they are quickly separated. And after a terrifying encounter with the Martians on the River Thames, the narrator finds an abandoned boat, which he uses to paddle towards London. Overcome by fever and faintness, he stops at Walton, where he meets the curate, who will become his companion for the next few weeks. Hope you were listening. It's time for more questions. Play.
You can't wait on their affirmation. You can't wait on their approval. You can't wait on their support. Sometimes you just gotta run and look behind you and say, everybody who wants to run, run, but I can't stop running because you're not running with me. Listen to me, hear me. You can't stop chasing your dream just because somebody in your life is chasing with you. You can't stop believing in yourself just because somebody in your life will believe in you. You can't stop chasing the dreams of your life just because when you know if you do it, you're gonna have to do it all by yourself.
Well done, Noah. Hi, Amani. Amani, you should read this book or this story. Well done, Luke, for number 2. pause. Okay, let's have some answers. Lots of you getting them right. Some of you making up some answers, but why not? If you don't know the answer, the least you can do is just have a go and make something up. So question number 1, what weapon do the Martians use against the soldiers? Well, it's described as heat rays. But if you said laser beams, that's perfectly acceptable. But if you were doing comprehension in school, you would probably be expected to use the exact words out of the text. And I did say heat rays, but either work fine for English Live. I'm a little bit more relaxed. Number 2, what does the sight of the Martian fighting machine cause the narrator to do? It causes him to crash his cart and it breaks the horse's neck. So well done if you got that sad one correct. And number 3, what happens to the narrator after his terrifying encounter with the Martians on the River Thames? Well, he finds an abandoned boat, he paddles towards London, and he meets the curate, who becomes his companion over the coming weeks. So well done if you got those 3 correct, or even if you got 1 correct, or even if you got none. As long as you're listening and you're trying, that's a really good start. I'm going to pop that there. And here we go with the next part of the story. At this point, the narrative focus changes. So the narrator's focus on what they're talking about changes. The narrator begins to tell the story of the invasion as it was experienced by his younger brother, a medical student who is also unnamed. So the narrator of the story who's in the story and his brother, we don't ever learn their names. His younger brother is in London, and according to the narrator, news of the Martian invasion was slow to spread in London. 2 days after the initial attack, most Londoners were either unaware or unconcerned about the danger presented by the Martians. Only after the Martians march up to London do the inhabitants begin to panic. The Martians release a poisonous black smoke over the city, forcing civilians to evacuate en masse altogether and suddenly. While attempting to flee to Essex, the narrator's brother catches a group of men in the act of robbing 2 women. The brother bravely intervenes and saves the women, and they allow him to join in their carriage. And the 3 of them, the brother and 2 women, set out for the southeastern coast of England. After a series of unfortunate events, which you can read about if you read the story, I think there's a free copy online as well, their pony is taken away as food by the Committee for Public Supply. Not so good. The party reaches the coast, where they combined their money and buy passage to Ostend in Belgium on a steamer boat. As the steamer pulls away from the shore, the brother watches a spectacular fight between a warship, the torpedo ram HMS Thunderchild, and 3 Martian fighting machines. A very dramatic moment in the story. Let's have 3 more questions. Hope you were listening. Play. Oh, wrong order. Well done, Mohit. Got the first one correct. Scarlett, happy birthday to your friend. done, Harriet, for question 1. Pause. Okay, right, let's get some answers to these questions. Just slide that there for you. So, here we go. Question number 1. What profession does the narrator's younger brother hold? Well, he's a medical student, so if you put a doctor, I'll let you have it. Or if you put he works in the medical field like Harriet did, then well done, you've got that correct. Number 2, why do you think news of the Martians' invasion was slow to spread in London? Now, I hadn't yet told you that this was set around 1894. So that's it's approximately 125 years ago. So if something like this was happening in London today, or anywhere in the UK, we'd all know about it very quickly. Why might they not have known about it so quickly then? They probably didn't have the same means of sharing news like we do today. They wouldn't have had social media or mobile phones, but also maybe they were unconcerned with the prospect of Martians visiting them. Maybe they thought that the Martians would be friendly. Maybe they just were otherwise preoccupied. Question number 3, how do the group make passage to Ostend in Belgium? So that's the brother and the 2 women that he saved from being robbed. They try to make passage on a steamer boat, and that's as far as we get in the story. So well done if you got those 3 correct. We'll move on to the next part of the story after I very, very quickly, it's lovely and sunny today, isn't it? Sort of lighting up my lounge come studio. Before we get on with the next part of the story, we've got some shout outs. So hello to Afia, who is 9 in Leicester, who loves the lessons. Awesome, Afia, brilliant, thank you. Hello to Isla May. Hello to Cecilia. Hello to Caris, who is 11 in Bradford. Hello to Ava and Rufus. Hello to Junaid, who is 12 in Bradford. Hello to Frankie, who is 12 in Kent, who's been watching since series 2. Hello to Ishmael, who is 7 in Bradford. Hi, Drashika. Hello, Oscar, who is 11, and brother, who is 8 in Yorkshire. Hello, boys. And happy birthday to Katie K. So big shout out and hello to all of you. Thank you very much for joining me again today. So let's move on with the story. So, meanwhile, so we've just had the point at which the brother and the 2 ladies have tried to make passage to Belgium to escape the Martians. Meanwhile, the narrator and the curate plunder houses in search of food. At Sheen, which is a place, they find a well-stocked house and they decide to stop for a quick rest. They are almost immediately disturbed by a blinding glare of vivid green light. Suddenly, a cylinder strikes the ground outside and the narrator is knocked unconscious. When he comes to, the curate tells him not to move because the Martians are outside. The narrator and the curate decide to stay in the ruins of the house. After about a week of watching the Martians and rationing what little food they have left, their relationship begins to deteriorate. They're friends to start with, aren't they? They're companions. The curate eventually becomes hysterical and the narrator is forced to knock him unconscious. The scuffle was overheard by a Martian who, much to the narrator's horror, stretches a tentacle into the ruins, and the tentacle drags the curate's unconscious body out of the house and nearly grabs the narrator. The narrator hides alone in the ruins for 6 days, and when he finally emerges from the house, he discovers that the Martians have abandoned the cylinder. After observing the wreckage around the house, the stunned narrator begins walking towards London. Hope you were listening. 3 more questions. Okay. Are you enjoying the story? I think it's a great story.
You can't can't wait on their support. Sometimes you just gotta run and look behind you and say, everybody who wants to run, but I can't stop running because you're not running. Listen to me, hear me. You can't stop chasing your dream just because somebody in your life is chasing you. You can't stop believing in yourself just because somebody in your life is believing in you. You can't stop chasing the dreams of your life just because when you know you can do it, you're gonna have to do it all by yourself.
That'll do. Lots of really good efforts with number one. You're thinking outside the box if you're not sure what it means. Really good. Pause. Okay, let's get some answers to these before we do the very last section of the story. So, what does the word plunder mean? Well, it means to, by hostile takeover, steal and take things that don't belong to you, normally in a war or conflict situation. So that's what the narrator and the curate do at that abandoned house. They go and take food and such like. Number two, why did the narrator have to knock the curate out unconscious? Because he was becoming hysterical and their relationship had deteriorated. But just because your relationship deteriorates, you can't just go and knock people out. But this is quite an extreme situation that they've found themselves in. Number three, what does the narrator do after observing the wreckage around the house? He begins to walk to London. I mean, what else would you do? Okay, so we're going to move on to the last part of the story now before I give you the challenge. So every day at the end of my English live lessons, I give you a challenge to go away and work on afterwards. But first of all, the last part of the story. On the way to London, he once again encounters the artilleryman, who fills him in on the events of the past 2 weeks. So 2 weeks have passed. Lots has happened. According to the artilleryman, the Martians have destroyed London and they've set up camp in the north end of the city. He claims it is all over and that humankind is simply beat. The artilleryman eagerly tells the narrator about his plan to live beneath London and build a community of like-minded survivors in the sewers. The narrator considers joining him, but he ultimately decides against it, and he leaves, continuing his journey towards London alone. The path to London is marked by mass destruction, and as he walks, the narrator sees piles upon piles of bodies. In the distance, he hears a Martian chanting "Ula" and follows the sound of its voice. Ready to end it all, I mean, you're going to more or less have given up hope at this point. Ready to end it all, the narrator approaches a fighting machine, only to discover that the Martian inside is already dead. As it turns out, all of the Martians are dead. They are slain by, and this is a quote from the text, the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. This is a bacteria on Earth that we can cope fine with that Martians couldn't. The narrator is overwhelmed and he suffers a 3-day nervous breakdown. Well, you would, wouldn't you? After a kind family nurses him back to health, he makes his way back to Maybury, where he has his home. When he reaches home, he discovers that his wife has also survived. Hooray! In the epilogue to the story, the narrator considers the significance of the Martian invasion and warns future generations to prepare themselves. And that brings us to the end of the story. It's got a happy ending in a sense, hasn't it? His wife also survives, and he finally gets home after these 2 dramatic weeks of Martians trying to take over the Earth. So our 3 last questions. Here we go. Okay. Let's see if you can get 15 out of 15. Lots of you drawing parallels with what's going on in the world today, which is nice.
You can't wait for their support. Sometimes you just gotta run and look behind you and say, everybody.
Pause. Okay, let's do the answers. I think these ones are quite easy, these final ones. Stop my board from collapsing. So, number 1, the Martians have set up camp north of London. Number 2, the mass death of all of the Martians is caused by a bacteria or a virus that their systems were not prepared for when they landed on Earth to take over. And number 3, the good news that the narrator discovers when he returns to Maybury is that his wife has also survived. So, like I said, some sort of happy ending despite all of the tragedy and loss and destruction of the 2 weeks that precedes it. So hopefully you got 15 out of 15. Maybe you got 5 out of 15. Maybe you didn't get any. Maybe you were so into the story that you weren't focusing on trying to pick out facts and details, which is absolutely fine. I hope you enjoyed it. Now we have a challenge. Today's challenge is to design an alien. Now, I'd like you to annotate it with descriptive words. So annotate means to label it with descriptive words and any relevant information about its species. So it's quite a creative challenge today. And in a sense, you'll be designing a character. Now, it doesn't have to be based on War of the Worlds or the Martians in War of the Worlds. It could be completely your own design. And the star challenge, just to stretch you that bit further, is to write a story about your alien's first visit to Earth. So hopefully you'll take on this challenge. Once you've done your work, you can upload it to the Holly's English Hub Facebook group so we can all have a look at your work. And I do pop in and say well done and congratulations and give a little bit of feedback on your work. That brings me to the end of the lesson. Tomorrow we have the Spellathon at 11. The spellings are up on Facebook and Instagram and all over the place. So if you want to practice, you can. If you don't want to practice, just turn up and have a go. I will see you tomorrow at 11. Thanks for joining me today. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye.